How much money do you have to make to live a normal life in New York and still save and invest aggressively? For the sake of the example today, I am going to use the US's heaviest checking account hitter, Manhattan. Hopefully this example will be so extreme that any other expensive city's results could be easily extrapolated. So, welcome to New York? ? Per Investopedia, the cost of living index on the island of Manhattan is 238% higher than the national average, which means it costs a little less than 2.5 times as much to live a certain type of life in Manhattan as it would cost to live the equivalent life elsewhere. Although, I see those pictures that my New Yorker friends post of subway rats keeled over next to empty bottles of Jameson. I'm not sure you can recreate a New York life elsewhere. Part of its charm, I'm sure. The median cost of a home in Manhattan, so probably a 900 square foot space, is about $995,000 compared to the national median home that costs around $454,900. It's worth mentioning that we're not comparing apples to apples here. Pun intended. Median in New York still means you are likely talking about a relatively small apartment compared to what the median home's square footage clocks in at for the rest of the country. But the financial pain for a New Yorker begins long before they see their paycheck. They pay some of the highest income taxes in the country at both the state and local level. If you are in the income bracket we're going to be discussing today, you're probably going to be in at least the 6.33% marginal state tax rate and the 3.88% local tax rate. All in all, we can assume that we will lose around an additional 10.2% to taxes beyond our federal and FICA liability, so put that in your back pocket. As of March 2022, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the city that never sleeps is $4,331 per month, while the average two-bedroom will run you a horrifying $6,191 per month. I wouldn't be sleeping either. Despite all my internet digging, I actually couldn't find any official statistics for the average person's all-in monthly spending in NYC the same way I could for the national averages, but I did think of a workaround. So the 2019 figures pulled from the Census Bureau that I quoted in the Millionaire in 10 Years episode were as follows. A single person spends on average $3,200 a month, a couple spends $5,500, and a family of four spends $7,100. Since we know the cost of living index in NYC is 238% higher than the national average, it stands to reason that we could multiply our national average spending figures by around 238% to get a more accurate picture of New York City specific life. So that brings our single person's monthly spending to around $7,500, a couple to around $13,000, and a family of four to a staggering $16,800 or so. Now, here's the thing. I have no idea if these numbers are accurate. It seemed a little bit high to me personally. Like, I can't imagine many of the singles or married people that I know in New York are spending between $7,500 and $13,000 a month for their lives there. But hey, who am I to question the statistical accuracy of cost of living estimates that I found on the internet? I am merely Google's humble servant. So to validate my theory, I did post an informal poll on Instagram, as a sizable chunk of my audience resides in New York City, and I asked them to weigh in. Roughly 60% of respondents said this was actually about in line with their spending, 30% said they spend less, and around 10% said they spend more. So all that to say, I'm actually pretty comfortable using these numbers. If anything, hopefully they're a little bit generous. Now, we can get a far clearer picture for the type of income we would need to make the sort of progress we want to make. In the How to Become a Millionaire in 10 Years episode use case, we identified how much money someone would have to invest every month to go from $0 to $1 million net worth in just 10 years. For reminder's sake, the magic number was $6,050. Using our New Yorker average spending numbers, that means our New Yorkers would need to take home, if they're single, $13,634 per month after taxes, or $163,308 per year after taxes. A couple would have to take home $19,085 per month after taxes, which is equivalent to roughly $230,000 per year post-tax. And a family of four would have to bring in $22,877 per month after taxes, which is around $274,000 total post-tax. Now, we can continue to back our way up to the pre-tax numbers. So using the Smart Asset Income Tax Calculator, using the 10001 zip code to achieve those after-tax totals in Manhattan, with Manhattan tax rates and all, that means total compensation or salaries would have to be single around $260K, couple around $350K total or $175K per adult on average, and a family of four around $415K or $207K per adult on average. These are mostly household incomes that are solidly in the top 10 to 15% of the national income distribution. A single person, a couple, or a family of four making the incomes that I just stated in New York City could spend the amounts I reviewed and still invest enough to become millionaires in 10 years, assuming the average historical 7% annualized return. According to the census, the median household income in NYC is $67,046 as of 2020, which is, shockingly, lower than what the census reports for median household income nationally at $67,521 in the same year. 17.3% of New York City dwellers live in poverty compared to 11.4% nationally, which may explain part of what's happening here. But no matter how you slice this data, it's clear that most New Yorkers are not in the income brackets that we're looking at today, which means most are not able to save enough to do what we were referencing before, which is going to $1 million from zero in just 10 years. Still, even if you wanted to take a more realistic approach to hitting your first magic million while living in NYC, so investing the $2,500 per month over 20 years instead of $6,000 a month over 10, you would still need to earn pretty high pre-tax salaries. Single around $195, a couple around $275 or like $137.5 each, and then a family of four around $340K or around $170K each. Any way you spin it, whether you are trying to invest to become a millionaire at rapid speed in 10 years or you're going to go in 20, the incomes required are in the low to mid six figures range, which I'm sure surprises approximately nobody. In conclusion, I don't think it's a stretch to say that only the top 10% can afford to live there comfortably and still make financial progress. As we can tell from the median wage data and poverty rates, most people are not living comfortably in New York. And even those that are almost certainly not saving in the way that we just described. One of my original theses when I started poking around for answers on this topic was that cities are beginning to skew richer. They're pricing people out who would like to live there but simply can't afford to. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a frustrated Uber driver in San Francisco back in 2016 who told me that all the artists had to leave because it was just too expensive. But interestingly, according to this piece from Grist in 2015, which uses U.S. Census data to visually map the wealth of popular cities and their surrounding counties, you find there's actually more wealth around cities than within them.
Hi, my name's Dorinda Medley, and of course you know me from The Real Housewives of New York City, and we are today at Bluestone Manor.
So imagine cushy New York City or Bay Area suburbs. And it makes the point that the cities are full of rich people trope kind of rings hollow, save for a few extreme outliers. And when you search U.S. wealth by county, it's pretty obvious that the most affluent portions of the map tend to cluster around the major metro areas. 4 of the top 10 highest earning counties in the U.S. were in Virginia, according to 2020 U.S. Census data. 3 were in California, all in the Bay Area, and 1 apiece in Colorado, New York, and Maryland. The wealthiest New York county is Nassau County, outside of Manhattan, and Virginia and Maryland's heavy representation in the top 10 wealthiest counties are largely D.C. suburbs. Hey, maybe that's where all of our Congress people with hundreds of millions of dollars live. Hashtag eat the rich. Anyway, it appears most of the wealth clusters around the urban areas as opposed to being directly in them, Manhattan being no exception, but here's the twist. Compared to the cost of suburban living, urban living is actually quite economical. For example, people living in Manhattan often don't have cars. Only 22% of households own cars as of 2018, compared to a range of 60% in the wealthy surrounding suburbs and counties. And the average living space used per person in Midtown Manhattan is 920 square feet, compared to the average home in the US that's well over 2,000 square feet. For introverts who love their space and taking long drives, I might be describing your personal hell, but it's hard to deny that New Yorkers and those who live in urban areas in general tend to make do with less. Less space, fewer, if any, vehicles, and consequently, less stuff to fill the smaller spaces. You are almost forced into minimalism, even if you're doing well for yourself, which has positive implications for everything from the environment to your own shopping habits. All that to say, while the cost of housing and or the things you need tend to be higher in cities, the way of life itself tends to lend itself to fewer large fixed expenses. Cities also tend to be densely populated, which I've argued in the past is good for a sense of community, sporadic chance encounters, meeting new people who are likely more different from you than the types of people you'd meet in, say, a Colorado suburb, like where I live, and the job opportunities tend to be more plentiful too. In short, it totally tracks that young people, especially, who typically find themselves lower on the income distribution, would want such an experience. Moreover, if increasing your income isn't an option for whatever reason, there are other ways to lower structural expenses in cities that tend to be more challenging in suburban areas. For example, you can leverage public transport rather than owning a car or Ubering. You can get another roommate or move to an outer borough, in the case of New York City, that may have cheaper housing than the 10001 zip code while still offering easy access to the city via public transport.